Hello and welcome to another episode of OnReviewCast, your number one go-to review show for all things media. I'm your host, Sarah Ash, and today we're looking at something really spectacular, guys. Something really special, something really near and dear to my heart, an IP that's been around for years, and it's actually quite awesome. It's Yu Yu Hakusho, live action, on review, episode 1, on review. Yeah, so today we decided to take a look at Yu Yu Hakusho's live action series, and because it just recently came out, and I was just curious as to how it would go. And honestly, I gotta say, it was surprisingly, entertaining. It was entertaining. Now, was this perfect? Honestly, no. I'll be straight up with you guys. No, it wasn't perfect, but it was entertaining. But anyway, guys, like every other episode, let's do an episode breakdown. It's because this one is actually newer. We don't have fandom, but we do have IMDb. So we're going to do an episode breakdown courtesy of IMDb. Synopsis. Awaken to the startling truth, Yusuke is greeted by a spirit guide. Meanwhile, a malevolent otherworldly forces unleash chaos in the human world. And boy, do they really. Man, this, like I said, this first episode, and I'm reading some of the comments here from IMDb. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Truthfully, okay, sure. But, I mean, it did things. It entertained me. I'm not gonna lie. It did entertain me. I thought that it might have been not as great, honestly, as 2. I think, again, we spoke about this one in the other series that we've previously reviewed too, and come off the heels of some of those live action series that we took a look at. Honestly, I probably surmised that it was not gonna be the greatest, if I'm being honest. You know what I mean? I thought that it was going to be a little bit more rougher than it actually was. They changed things, guys. I know all you anime and manga readers out there that are stay true to the canon. Don't you change a goddamn thing when you make these things live action. No, we're definitely not like that in OnReviewCast. I'm not like that at all. Like, we embrace change, and if it's for the better or it's for making the story work a little bit better, because realistically, when they initially created these stories, I'll be straight up with you. You people know, Togashi. People who are familiar with his works, like Hunter x Hunter, and he has back problems and etc. and all these other things that's going on with him. When he first initially came out with some of these mangas, he didn't really have an initial plan. You know what I mean? Like, so changing up some things. This is like, we gotta remember too, like, these things in this era of time of anime was back in the 80s. And I had to definitely remind myself of that going through some of the clothing and material in this stuff. Because I was kind of like of the impression, like, their clothes look a little weird. Especially like Yusuke and Kuwabara's clothes, like they're all kind of like baggy, but you gotta remember, like, that was kind of like probably like the 80s and 90s style of during that era and during that time. And you actually watch Yu Yu Hakusho, they do have baggy pants and baggy clothing in the beginning, because that was just like indicative of the time. But something that I just noticed, and something that I had to remind myself of while watching, was like, when was this original source material actually like created? I mean, aesthetic wise though, realistically, like the uniforms and stuff and everything else, they look pretty true to the actual show, if I'm being honest, with the aqua green students of blue with the aqua blue uniforms, and actually you're actually interacting with students in the school, and you can see that he's the only one that actually wears like pure like green, like that. Those subtle differences are actually seen aesthetically within the show, and it's not bad. I just started talking about aesthetics while we're talking about it right now. Honestly, let's talk about the actor real quick of Yu Yu Hakusho. So on first introduction to him, because I went into this blind, I was looking at him, I was like, doesn't really look like Yusuke, right? He doesn't really. When I saw Yusuke Urameshi, like his hair looks kind of weird. It looks a little bit too big. Like Yusuke has like nice looking like sheen cut smooth hair. His hair doesn't really necessarily look like that. It looks kind of weird. It's a rough. I'll say with this thing too, right? It's a little bit of a jarring, rough start with this. So again, getting used to how some certain characters look, but I think that's a part of the live action experience because we're so used to, especially with Yusuke. Yusuke's been around for so long. We're so used to how Yusuke like looks and Yusuke is supposed to look with the anime and the manga that it is a little bit jarring, a little bit weird to see him come into live action aspects. So, like I said before, guys, there are some changes in this besides him looking at his aesthetics. One of those changes that I was tremendously shocked with, like I said, with when it first started, was the fact that this motherfucker is smoking. What? He smokes. Yusuke smokes, and they changed his age, and they changed the fact that he smokes. Relatively, for the most part, a lot of the other characters remain traditional to the actual base storyline, like his mother, who is, implied to be like somewhat of a prostitute or whatever it is, and his girlfriend Keiko, and Kobar. These are the side characters that are technically in his life. But the fact that I guess it kind of was a little bit jarring for me, right? And let me know what you guys think inside the comments if you agree with me. Seeing him smoking was a little bit weird. It was just like Yusuke doesn't smoke. That's not what he's about. But he might be a thug and a gangster, but like he doesn't really smoke. He doesn't really, he's bad, but he doesn't really live an unhealthy like sort of like lifestyle. But I think it was just to give the image of like, and then bring up that more that I don't care attitude, that punk attitude of what they were trying to capture back then. Okay, let's gotta talk about Kuwabara real quick. The introduction of Kuwabara, the second he came on the screen, I was like, yeah, that's Kuwabara in him. Besides the big ass bright yellow, big ass bright blue jumpsuit that they employ, and it's actually a storytelling technique or manga technique in terms of like color, really. You give your characters a certain aesthetic, so they stand out, right? Yusuke with the green, and everybody else in the school wears aqua green, and Kobara with the bright blue, and everybody in the school wears a dark blue, so they stand out. So you know that these characters are significant. But I just want to say his introduction was very much like the show, and I respect that. Thank you guys, for doing that. His introduction was actually really good, and his acting and performance, I think, through at least for the first episode that we reviewed so far, has been pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, honestly. And that initial when Yusuke like uppercuts him, he's like, "Oh, I'm not giving up," and he kind of brings himself back. Like that was a very cool bar like attitude. And it was even this introduction with the music started, that old like 80s like hip hop kind of like the vibe kind of started. You were like, oh yeah, like it's fucking on, like it's fucking on. This is cool bar. But like I said, in this thing, man, they changed some things, and it's not really. I mean, I feel like, and realistically, like I want to talk about this on like a generic, on like a global scale. In terms of like change and changing things in like live action from the anime. The anime, I think you can get away with an IP like this with Yu Yu Hakusho because it's a grand legendary anime that everybody like fucking loves. But the anime changes, the anime changes the change from the anime to the live action. I think you can get away with this more because like it's been so long, and Yu Yu Hakusho has been a long running anime. Right, it's been a long, not running. It's not continuously running, but like it's been in the most legendary. It's been in the area of the most legendary animes of all time. So much so. I'm sorry for screaming, guys, but so much so that people. It's been a bunch of years later, and people still know it and remember it and know these characters very, very well. It was like the height of the anime in the 90s, at the whole anime introduction era. But I think you can get away with it because it's been so long. Like I said, people won't remember the exact details, and they probably be a little bit more accepting towards it. One of the bigger things in this is like the changes is like even like the little things like the introduction to Keiko and the fact that she had a ramen shop. Her dad owned a ramen shop, and Yusuke would basically eat there every once in a while. In the anime, you never really see that until like towards the end. We don't even know shit about Keiko really until like towards the end. Besides that, she fucks around with Yusuke, and Yusuke is like her best friend, and like they're like or have like somewhat like a romantic relationship. And like I said, other changes like the fact that Yusuke is like 17 and not 14 in this now, and he smokes, and they're just a little bit older. I think. And if I'm being honest, I guess works a little bit better in terms of accepting him as being more of this punk kind of thing. And the reason that traditionally, actually, if you think about it, they make their anime characters so young initially before is the fact that they have somewhere to go. They have somewhere to go, and they have somewhere to draw upon to maybe keep him young and work on characterization and development as he gets older into his maybe like older teen years. It's the expansion of the story. It's to keep the story going for as long as possible. That's why you see Naruto, and you see even hell Goku starts out as a little kid in Dragon Ball. They start from the beginning, and then they go to all the way to his adulthood, right? It's just the expansion of the story. So I mean, like that doesn't really bother me at all. Okay, something that we got to talk about real quick though. So in the original Yu Yu Hakusho series breakdown, animated version of it, and the original story as to how it goes, we know that Yusuke Urameshi, how this basically starts is that he's dead. He starts off dead. Literally, that's what the narrator says. He's like, ironically, he's the hero of the story, but ironically, he's dead. And it's like, and Yusuke starts to remember, it's like, okay, wait a minute, what the hell happened? And Takashi uses this like flashback tool to basically review everything that's happened, and that's what they've been doing inside of the show too. Okay, fine. But the thing that was fucking different from the anime and I assume the manga as well, and versus the live action with what they're doing here, this shit, is that the brutalness, it set a tone for how the show's gonna be. The brutalness is turned up to. It's just live. Like I don't know this. I don't know how else to. I don't know how else to explain it. I don't know how else to say about it. Really, it's just. The brutalness is live. It's really raw. It's just because that initial car scene, like you guys know probably like the story of Yu Yu Hakusho is that he skips school and he goes off. He fucks off. He sees this little kid playing in the road with this ball, and he's bouncing the ball about, and he hangs out with the little kid for like 2 seconds, and then a couple of minutes later he passes the little kid again, and the kid is about to get hit by a car from these two idiots that are fucking having a jolly old time and not paying attention to the road. And Yusuke pushes the kid out of the way, and he gets run over by the car. He gets hit by the car, and he rolls over the car. In the live action series, just to grab your attention to show how fucking brutal we can fucking get, this motherfucker, it plays out the same way, kind of, sort of, but it's not a car, it's a fucking truck. It's one of those like delivery fucking trucks. And Yusuke, the way that he goes to like save, that's how I know that this is gonna be like something a little bit different. This is gonna hit a little bit different. Like Yusuke goes to run and rescue this kid, and the way how they're telling the story, it's not a car. It's not necessarily through one of those like intersections in a normal street. It's through a busy like market, and Yusuke goes to save this kid, and the truck, instead of like it just hitting him and him getting slidden over to the side or him going over the truck, this motherfucker goes under the truck. He gets hit by the truck, and it's a bad accident. It causes the truck to topple over, and like I said, it's one of those delivery trucks. It is crazy, and that's how the actual fucking show starts. Like I said, he gets hit, and he gets mangled by this thing. He goes, guys, I can't even explain this in words. Like, you got to see the show. He gets ran over by this fucking truck, and it is brutal. It is just, it's almost a little bit rough to watch, honestly. And again, that's how the show starts, and it's just like off the bat, I was like, holy shit. I was like, I wasn't expecting that. They did that in a very, because we know the guy, like, we know how he dies, or how he ended up dead. How he became a ghost, right? He got run over by a car, and I was like, okay, I'll be doing it. But that was something different that was from the anime and the manga. That definitely 110% caught me off guard. And it's that's how I knew it was going to be a little bit different. It was going to be a different experience, I think, from the actual anime and manga that we actually know. Yeah, it set the tone. It set the tone, I think, of what this possibly is going to be like, and it kept me 110% definitely engaged. But moving on from that, like, and then how's like the normal Yu Yu Hakusho story goes, we meet Botan, and Botan. First of all, let's talk about the casting in this. Like, we took a look at like other series, and we've seen it by now, or you've probably seen other series right now. They do live action, and the most recent thing I think that came out was One Piece, and we took a look at that as well on review. The thing is with One Piece that they had a more very diverse and accumulated cast of different backgrounds. This live action, and for this IP, I think they made a smart choicing in terms of casting. They kept the cast all Asian, Asian descent. I don't want to say Japanese descent, I'm not sure about that, but it looks very like much so that they're all Asian, and it is a brilliant choice. For this particular IP, this would not work with any other diverse cast or mixing it up. And I think that this tells the story of, if we're gonna continue to do these live action things, and I mean, like, if they're gonna be like these, like, honestly, so far anyway, from what we've seen, they should. It's entertaining, and it's gonna get some people into actually the realms of anime, and into the realm and the stories of anime, and be more, maybe even more accepting of anime, those who reject it or who don't really see any fascination with it. The point is that it's entertaining, and we talked about, like, and we're going to talk about, you guys can see some of the videos, we talk about the clear distinction of whether, you know, it's just an adaptation of the actual source material, or it is its own thing, its own cinematic universe. So far from what I've seen from this first episode, it definitely strives to be its own cinematic thing, and it's been striving to be its own cinematic thing, and it's how well you can do that while staying true to the original source material. So more to that fact, when we're meeting Botan, and seeing that, like, more or less we're going to keep the cast straight up Asian, and especially it is Yu Yu Hakusho, and when you look back, it makes sense that Kiyoori City, I think that's what he is originally in the original Yu Yu Hakusho. The original Yu Yu Hakusho story takes place in Kiyoori City or whatever it is. Like, that's a Japanese city. That's a Japanese town. Let's not fuck about here. Like, that's a Japanese town. And most of his, and it makes sense that most of his interactions and most of his people around him are Japanese or of Asian descent, which works, which is fine. I think, like, in this context is appropriate. That's all I want to really say about that. Now, aesthetics wise, we talked about things looking more I want to talk about and getting into, like, live action. Something that I think some of the pitfalls we've seen with the previous series is that, are we going to make things look more or less like cosplay, or are they going to look more or less like this is an actual fucking, like, again, cinematic universe? And that's where we have to draw the distinction. I talked about this in some other live action things that we covered, but that's where we have to draw the distinction of how it's going to be successful. Is it going to be successful? The likelihood of it being successful. If it's more of its own cinematic thing and it looks great, aesthetics wise, it's going to be more successful. Now, how that works and how that comes down to is it comes into particular categories of hair and makeup, obviously with the hair and makeup and the clothing of the actual characters themselves, and then the graphics and I guess realistically we're not getting around it, it's the CGI and the special effects of everything during the film, during the episodes. In this, right, and I'll be straight up, in this, the special effects and everything else is pretty fucking on point. The way how she transfers Ryusuke to like the spirit world, usually like in the anime and the manga, it's a cut. It's a straight cut. And it's like, oh, we're in spirit world now. That's what it is. But the fact that they did an actual like transition thing to and from the human world to the spirit world, I thought that was pretty cool. That's something that we've never even actually seen in the anime, and that's something that you can give the anime watchers as well as the non-anime and manga readers and watchers, some people who aren't familiar with the show at all. So it's something for A and B, and I think that that's how you make a successful there's another key in making adaptation coming from anime and manga to that of live action to make that work. Now, while I will say in this, so far from what we've seen, again, I'll repeat it, the live action special effects, VFX, and the CGI all look amazing. However, the hair and makeup for this stuff, especially when we get into like spirit world and we look at the other environment that's around, it's looking a bit rough. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be straight up with you guys. It's looking a bit rough. Like the background, especially like for spirit world, when we first meet Koenma, right? It's so funny too. When we first meet Koenma, I gotta comment on this real quick. Koenma, we know Koenma as the small little baby kid with the pacifier in his mouth, but they decided to change this up, and they decided to go the route of making him a little a tall guy, big tall guy of in his adult form. And we know that he eventually gets to his adult form in the anime and manga, but the thing is that he doesn't get that until all the way until like the Dark Tournament, and that's way deep into the series of Yu Yu Hakusho. And you know what? We'll actually talk about the pacing of this a little bit later towards the end of the video. But they made a choice to make him big, and I was like, why did they do that? They could have just got like a little kid, honestly, to just play him. They didn't have to be a baby. They were already changing ages for Yusuke, because obviously getting a little baby child or making him animated, like in terms of like a CGI, I think might be a little bit weird. I get that. That's fine. That's fair enough. But the fact that they made him a straight up adult, they probably thought it would be easier to do that, but they just could have got a little kid, and it wouldn't really be that hard to really get a little kid to like participate in this and just like do certain gestures or whatever it is. I don't think it would have been that hard to actually get that. But there's a scene in this with Koenma, and he's showing Yusuke the different enemies that he has to fight, or the different the issues that's happening in the human world, like I always explained in the synopsis of what's going on with the problem that he's having, and how he wants Yusuke to now be a spirit detective. Again, not exactly how it goes in the show. In the show, he has to go through a whole number of ordeals that basically get his body back in order to be resurrected. But in this, it's kind of like, oh, we have a job for you, so we need you to go back to Earth and figure this out, and you're going to be a spirit detective. And Yusuke automatically declines. But the point is that I'm getting towards this is that like it's an insect, right? Instead of like we know in the show, the way how he initially comes back, again, he has to go through all these ordeals, and then his first like quote unquote case is like this little demon that he finds that infects this guy that's holding Kobaru's cat captive. Completely different from the live action. In the live action, there's this insect, which is fine, a little bit jarring because they used the whole concept of insects in another arc, which they skip over. We're gonna get the pacing later. But when he's showing him this like cool 3D CGI thing of mud is like shown in front of him, and in the background you can see it's like it's like four in the back and the four. That's the foreground. It's this cool 3D CGI thing that they're obviously doing with the computer. And it looks awesome. But in the foreground, in the background, you can tell like it's obviously some kind of green screen that they're using for Koenma's like for the spirit world that they're supposed to be in, and it's like it just looks rough. And like I said, like Koenma and Botan, they both look like more or less like cosplay characters, and that's the I see the difference between when we take a look at other IPs. Like we took a look at One Piece. One Piece doesn't look like, the characters don't look like they are of they're cosplay, or they're trying to cosplay. In that, it looked like straight up like those characters came off of the fucking comic book and came to life. And I think, again, if you want this to be a cinematic thing, that a cinematic universe of Yu Yu Hakusho that actually succeeds, you have to, I think any live action coming from anime to live action, that's what I'm talking about, guys. Doing that transition, you have to make that seamless. You have to make that look good. It just looked like a lot of cosplay thing. The costume, it looks like they were wearing costumes. Like even Terukune, and when we meet Terukune and we meet Sakio for sure, and they look like, while in the face, I will admit, like Terukune looks like Terukune in the face. But I will say that in with the case of Sakio, it kind of looks like he's wearing like a wig, almost sort of, and he doesn't look like, he doesn't have this. That's why he doesn't even really look like Sakio. They didn't express the scar on his. He's supposed to have like a scar on his face, right? Like they didn't express that too much. So even like when I was looking at him, I was like, "Is that Sakio? Is this Sakio?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I can see the scar," but it's fake. I can barely see it in the show. It's very apparent that motherfucker has a scar, and he is Sakio. That's what makes him Sakio. That's like I can tell him apart. The only other way I guess that was Sakio is when I saw the casino actually, and they showed him before, and I didn't even recognize that motherfucker. I was like, "This is supposed to be Sakio?" I was like, I don't even know. But the only reason I noticed it, or I understood that would just be Sakio, is when I saw Terukune next to him in the gambling house. I was like, oh, it's supposed to be about Terukune arc and all this other stuff. Okay, cool. And who's that other guy? I was like, oh, it's Sakio. Like that just proves right there, the costume and makeup department, they are lacking a little bit there. I'm not gonna lie, and that's probably why when I first saw Yusuke, I was kind of like, "Is that supposed to be Yusuke? Is that really Yusuke? Yusuke doesn't really look like Yusuke. They could have done a little bit more with his hair. They could have fixed his hair a little bit more." I think that's the main issue with it. His hair doesn't look quite like Yusuke. Something funny I found in the live action, one of the funnier changes actually, with comedy in this, was that Yusuke is supposed to be dead, right? And they're supposed to have a funeral for Yusuke at his home, and this is basically how the story goes inside the anime and manga. That's all fine and well and dandy. But the picture that they use inside the anime and manga is a picture of him looking backwards, and it makes sense, and it's this kind of like sentimental thing of like him being dead. And it's like, oh, like it's a sad picture. But for some reason, and I don't know why, I guess Togashi or someone, whoever directed this, thought that this would be so fucking hilarious. They got like an awkward picture of the main guy just like standing in front of the camera, looking very awkward and uncomfortable. Honestly, that's what it looks like. He looks super duper uncomfortable. I thought that was hilarious. And it just, I don't know, it was something awkward that I had mentioned, that I had seen throughout it, and I thought that we definitely needed to discuss it on the OnReviewCast. So similar to that of the anime and manga, they are in the funeral for Yusuke, or the wake for Yusuke, and Kurobara shows up, and it's just like, it's almost like it was so like, it's, I don't know, again like watching this and like accepting this in like live action, it's a little bit like, it's kind of funny because this happens in the live action, but it's not like the way Kurobara shows up is that like 4 of his classmates have to kind of like haul him away. And that does kind of actually happen inside of the manga and anime. Like, he's so distraught, he's so devastated at the fact that Yusuke is gone and he won't be able to fight him again, and he starts yelling and he's like, oh, it's not fair, one more round and all this other stuff. And that actually happens, but I feel like it's heavily exaggerated within the live action. There's like 3 or 4 guys trying to pile up on him, trying to hold him back and stop him from fucking going in there and making a scene, etc. And he stopped some bullies on the way. And I forgot to mention, like, there's like a side, kind of almost like a sort of like a side story of where this guy is being bullied, who Yusuke actually helped in the initial scene, initial couple of scenes when he's at high school. He's being bullied and he's getting hit. He's basically these guys are robbing him. They're basically taking his money without permission. And without permission, it's basically robbing him, right? He's robbing someone. They're gonna ask for permission. Oh, can I take your money, please? No. Kuwabara actually stops these bullies, essentially. And that's when he starts to just randomly get mad about like how not to be able to fight, being able to fight Yusuke again, and being distraught over it. But yeah. I thought the acting by Keiko and Yusuke's mom, spot on. Honestly, I gotta see, and it's not always gonna be like the hype stuff that we look at on OnReviewCast here, guys. Some of the things that we take a look at is gonna be like nuance or what have you, but the acting by the actresses for Keiko and her were actually really, really good. And honestly, overall, they all did a pretty good job. Honestly, the casting and the acting, they're all did a really, really good job. I will say that no one really did a good job, even though no one really did a bad job. Sorry. No one really did a bad job, even though the things were a little bit jarring and a little bit changed to a certain degree about the actual story. Because I don't think Keiko, well, actually, no, they might have had a sort of a relationship, like she at least knew her, I think. She at least knew Keiko. Keiko and Yusuke's mom don't really talk or know each other like in the anime. They don't really focus on that too much. But I think it was just to kind of show Yusuke like how sad people would be if like he stayed dead, and or etc. Or if he was to not come back to life, so he can make the choice of going through whatever he needs to go through to have his life be resurrected. So anyway, they talk about they do the next scene of where the same guy that has been being bullied for quite some time, and they are kicking the shit out of this guy. They're beating his ass, and for whatever reason. And you know what? I just want to take a minute to pause here. This is how you fucking make. And I'm not trying to trigger anybody, and I'm not trying to, it's a huge topic, but this is how mental health, the mental health and the stability of sanity within certain people break down, and then they have these crazy things like mass shootings and like horrible, horrific events that actually happen in schools, like stabbings or whatever it is. It all starts with bullying. This is a lot of schools today have a low to no tolerance about bullying. And I remember that being the thing in my school. If we fought, you get kicked out. That's basically what it is. But back in the day, I remember this is taken from an 80s, 90s perspective. Like the thug of the high school thug was prevalent for Togashi's time back in the day of basically what was happening. And they're just kicking the shit out of this guy to beat him until he gets infected with the same bug that Koenmo was essentially talking about from Spirit World. And that's when shit fucking pops off. That's when shit popped off. Oh yeah. Anyway, yeah, so all hell fucking breaks loose. he gets like the super strength, and he's able to like take on these like 4 dudes that was basically bullying him. And although they essentially fucking deserved it, I mean, one of the guys are gonna burn him, and they set one of the bikes on fire, which basically causes this huge fucking fire throughout essentially the neighborhood. And Kobar and his goons essentially show up to see what's the noise and what all the noise is, because they were kind of like leaving the funeral, I guess. And they wanted to go see what was going on, and they meet this infected guy who and the police who was bullying him, trying to run away and fleeing. And Kobar is actually trying to fight this guy. So again, like completely different, right? Completely different from what we're used to of the original story of what is going on in the actual fucking like anime and manga for Yu Yu Hakusho. Completely different, not whatsoever any close to it. And I think it's fine-ish, because the fire the fire that actually starts, this is a weird thing. This is one of the weird things, right? One of the weird things, I'll admit. So the fire that starts, I guess they were saying that the fire that starts, in that little neighborhood that the little infected boy started, was caused by him. But in the show, it's just, I'm pretty sure it's just some random dude who didn't like Yusuke, or some random people who didn't like Yusuke, and they tried to freaking burn his home. But so that was a little bit weird. I don't like how they told that story of the fire, and like it's kind of like, how did she get outside? How did Yusuke's mom get outside when the fire started? Because when in the show, it's kind of like an explanation of like Yusuke's mom stepped out for a bit and the guy lights the fire. They show all that, but they did a lot of cuts, and I understand that it's only like the thing is only 5 episodes. The pacing of this we're going to talk about later in a little bit. That was the only thing I really didn't like, is like, how does fucking I didn't quite get it on first watch. Like, how does fucking fire start? Like, how did this fucking start? And it's like, oh yeah, the guy that was infected started the fire when the gasoline got lit because the other guy was trying to burn him, right? Like, okay, like, and he started kicking his ass, and then it started a whole neighborhood fire. Makes sense. Okay. And similarly, I guess, like to the anime and manga, Keiko, this does happen in the anime and manga, folks. Like Keiko and Yusuke end up in this inflamed house, and Keiko is just desperately trying to save him because she's a real one. And something that was different though, while Keiko is basically essentially trying to save him, Yusuke as a ghost finds them, and his physical self, and Keiko finds them, and Keiko is trapped, and Yusuke uses some kind of spiritual energy to hold a banister from like basically falling on them. Now, I will say this. It's a bit loud. Now, I will say this. I don't like how they're implementing a lot of the spirit energy stuff here. And this is the first time we actually see it. And he's actually a ghost, and he's holding up this banister. And I know if you're an anime manga fan, you're fucking freaking out. You're like, what is this shit? Like, really? Like, that's not basically how it goes or how it went. I know, guys. But listen, it's still very entertaining, and it gets even more hyped in a little bit. But this whole, even like the way that Koenma brings Yusuke back to life with this whole energy thing, it reminds me a bit too much of Dragon Ball Evolution, with this whole airy kind of like mystic smoky looking thing. That the effects for everything else looks good. It's so funny because everything else looks good in terms of VFX, but the effects that they use for the spirit energy, I cannot support and I cannot get behind. It just reminds me too much of that, and it's just not as strong. It's not as good. Honestly, I'll just be real with you. So Koenma brings Yusuke back to life, and he saves Keiko, and Keiko is basically knocked out. But the whole point of the whole deal, or the exchange thing for bringing him back to life, was that Yusuke was supposed to essentially stop this demon from there's a demon that's infecting this guy. It starts this demon that from causing further chaos within within the city. And they cut back to the guy that's actually infected with it. And Kuwabara and Co are basically trying to take this guy down. And with his, normal fist fighting, like you punk kind of like, it's not even really martial arts, punk kind of like fighting. And in the midst of like attempting to try to take him down, they are getting their asses kicked, like straight up. They're getting their asses kicked, and to a point where one of his friends is basically lit on fire. And I will say, like, again, this looks the way that they're fighting. So because they're watching like an anime, like a show, they have like specific like choreography, right? And it's the way in which like things should go, and like different cuts and shots and stuff or whatever. This is like a straight up fucking like brutal punk gang fight, dude. Because like at one point he grabs like a iron pipe thing and he knocks the shit out of Kuwabara, and Kuwabara just fucking takes it, and it's bloody. It's very bloody, and it's very very rough. Like I said, like and I like from that initial car scene, I knew that this was gonna get like a little hype in terms of like how rough it was gonna get. And man, and the guy that was infected looks like a zombie out of his mind. And again, the acting so good, very very good. Until again, Yusuke comes into and saving the day of it, and it's almost similarly to how it happens kind of sort of in the show. Yusuke's first case of the guy, this thing being infected and infecting him. This other guy, the demon, the basically a parasite demon taking control of this other guy's body. It does happen inside the anime and manga, is what I'm trying to say. It does happen, and Yusuke does save him. But it's not necessarily with a kick that he saves him. He saves him with like a punch. I mean, not necessarily saves him. He saves the cat, really, because like I mentioned before, it's a cat. And then Yusuke and this demon-possessed kid starts fighting, and this shit is fucking amazing. It's fucking amazing. And that's when I knew, I was like, okay, this could be something different. This is probably gonna be something different. Like, honestly, like this, it just like the whole struggle of him fighting him, and like the choreography of how like this happened was so cool. The camera angles and the shots and like the action, this entire fight sequence was amazing. This was great. And if all the fights are, I was thinking to myself, like, all the fights are gonna be like, this is how it's gonna be. This is like the cinematic thing that I was talking about. Like this, it jumped from like levels of like, okay, we're trying to we're trying to stop doing an adaptation. We're trying to stop trying to adaptate the original source material, and we're making our own like cinematic thing. And they did this. They did that masterfully here with this scene. Honestly, it was great. The way that he was fighting him was like it stopped being from like it looked like it stopped being like normal. Normal adaptation of moves, and it looks like it really reminded me of like those kung fu movies, those old school, you know what I mean, like those old school, like maybe like 80s 90s kung fu movies that you probably see on VHS or something like that. And if they're gonna do more of that, fuck yeah, I'm in. Like, and it doesn't look corny. It looks again like very real. All the stunts look real. Everything, like there's little cuts. I think that's what it is too. It looks fucking great. It doesn't look like there's hardly any stuntmen involved. It looks great. And then it's like the guy was being possessed by the demon. He went up to like level 2, and I know I said some stuff about the care and makeup, but obviously this thing was on a budget, because that transformation, he goes to like level 2 and the guy that's being possessed. his eye fucking pops out, moves to the side, and he looks like a real demon. He grows like a scythe for a hand, and it looks fucking good. It looks like demons are gonna be like this in the show. It looks fucking good. That's what we want. It looks real. It looks fucking real, and that's something that I could get behind in terms of like actually like in terms of actually like being different from the run-of-the-mill live action series. Is more of like a different cinematic experience for live action viewers that are fans of it, and for that are something and that are coming into it that's new as well. There's something for everyone. There has to be something for everyone. There has to be something for the people that are familiar with the IP, and there's some people who are not familiar with the IP at all. And if they could somehow combine that into something spectacular and a new cinematic universe for anime and manga, things will succeed, like I said. Because this fight sequence, not in the anime, we can see how it would possibly happen in the universe of Yu Yu Hakusho. It makes sense for it to happen in Yu Yu Hakusho, but not in the anime. So we don't really know what's gonna happen. The expectation of, okay, like he's gonna defeat X, Y, and Z person this way, like it's something new. It's something a different experience. So that's why this scene is working, and that's why the scene is so great. And it's very, like I said, it really reminds me of those old kung fu movies. It's really in your face, and the whole scene when he's fighting him, and this guy's like jumping all over the place, and he's jumping through the air and trying to kill Yusuke with this scythe. He looks like a demon. You feel that energy of like Yusuke might die. We know Yusuke's not gonna die, but like that energy, bringing that energy, that's true entertainment. And again, that's what's making this so successful. And the whole scene with the wires, how he's like tripping him up, and he's like coming up with this idea of like wrapping him up against the wall with these wires, and how he's fighting him with these wires, this ingenuitive idea of fighting with these wires, and how he's still like boxing him up with these wires, and he's using it to his advantage. That's a very Yusuke thing. And he's to use his environments or to use other things around him to win his fights. And we see that in the anime and manga, even when he fights Hiei with the mirror, and he shoots the spirit gun and it reflects, and like things like that. I like those ideas like that is what makes Yu Yu Hakusho like work. If he had just like used the spirit gun on this guy, and it would just be like, okay, yeah, that's how he beats him or whatever, and he had thrown a couple punches, and that would have been it, that would have not worked. And again, like making it successful in terms of like a live action series, that would have not been entertaining, and that would have not worked. But instead, it's this whole fucking action sequence where he has this scythe, and he's chasing him because Yusuke doesn't even know how to use his spirit gun right now. He's chasing him, and he's like trying to fight him, and there's fire all around, and he's scrappy, right? He's scrappy about fighting him. It's just, the action is so impactful here. And there's a gas tank that gets scratched from the scythe that he has, and there's fire all around, and Yusuke notices this, and understanding that, you know, gas and fire don't really mix well, he puts up a shield, and the shield blocks the explosion that essentially happens. It blocks the explosion of him getting blasted, and sends the demon flying into the air, and pushing Yusuke all the way back. And Yusuke has to use a shield from the ground, from like a manhole, essentially, to brace himself from the explosion. And like that entire sequence, that entire thing was just, had me gripped. It had me. I was in it. I've seen the anime. I've seen it. But like, this was just pure action. And it was something else. It was something different. It was something new. And it was working, dude. And it is working because I know that this is Yusuke. I know how he fights. And I was like, all the entire time I'm watching it, I'm just like, yes, Yusuke would do that. This is something Yusuke would do. Like, all of this makes sense. Like, it was something different. And it gave me a little bit more hope for what the series would be, and it gave me a little bit more hope for live action overall of what live action can be in terms of a adaptation or a cinematic experience. That's what we should start saying. Not an adaptation, no adaptations and more adaptation. Cinematic experience of an anime or a manga. And that's what this was, honestly. This first episode, holy shit. And that first scene, that's exactly what this was. Now, again, like I said, this thing is not perfect, but like that entire sequence fucking had me. I really don't like how they're doing like I said before, the spirit energy, because that's how he wins. He punches him, and he punches the shit out of him, essentially. He punches his his classmate so fucking hard that he spits out the demon, and he grabs the demon similarly to by his bare hands, similarly to how it kind of sort of happens in that of the anime, when he grabs the little demon that comes out of the boy's mouth. But in this, he does like a fun shit. It reminded me of Mortal Kombat, because like finish him, he crushes the fucking demon with his hand, and the demon explodes. Oh man, good though, very compelling fucking scene, very had me glued to the television for this entire thing. And Yusuke actually goes to help, and I think along with this, because they only have 5 episodes to try to summarize everything. Yusuke actually goes to help the classmate that was infected after getting that thing out of him, and he carries him off and he gets him help, and he returns back to Keiko's shop, ironically, at the ramen shop, and he sees Keiko and his mom after coming back to life, and they're so happy, and they greet him at the door, and it's a whole happy ending kind of thing. And then they show the preview for these golem looking things of what we got to see. And at the same time, I was kind of like, these things look weird. Like, I don't even remember these things like in Yu Yu Hakusho. What the fuck are these things? They're just like eating and destroying and killing people. And then I see a guy with a sword. Sorry for yelling, guys. And I see a guy with a sword that's like fucking slicing up motherfuckers. He's just taking them out. He's taking them down, no holds barred. And I'm just like, who's this supposed to be? It's like, oh, it's Hiei. And the effects of how he's running and how he's like just taking people down are amazing. And it looks good. He looks like Hiei. And then they show Kurama, and I gotta admit that he has the rose whip, and how he's using them and how he's making it look, and how he's killing people so skillfully with the rose whip. It looks like Kurama, how Kurama would fight. I have problems with Kurama's hair in this when I first saw it. Again, the makeup in the makeup department and the costume and makeup department in this live action series definitely needs a little bit more work, but you can tell that it's Kurama. And then I think we see I think it's Genbu or Genki, the monster, the big ogre like monster that they are initially with when you first meet Hiei and Kurama. And they steal the items. The items look a little bit different, but they still sort of work. Usually it's a sword, not a dagger, that Hiei steals. And the mirror just kind of looks like an iPad that Kurama takes. And the ball actually does look like a ball. And that's the end of the episode. But that was actually a pretty good like prelude as to what they're going to get into next for the second episode. And yeah, that was the first episode of the Yu Yu Hakusho live action series. And honestly, guys, I was surprised. I'll be straight up. I was surprised. I didn't think it was gonna be that entertaining. It was entertaining. You can't deny that wasn't entertaining. That was pretty fucking interesting. That was it. It's interesting to say the least, right? So there you go. We're gonna jump into a segment called Ash's favorite scenes. 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 Yes, that's what we're going to get into right now. All right, so we're gonna get into Ash's favorite scenes. And coming in at number 3, honestly, for Ash's favorite scenes and Ash's worst scenes. Wait, were there any worst scenes for this? Ash's worst scenes. I guess I didn't really like. There were certain things I didn't like about it, but there wasn't anything I didn't like overall. But wait a minute, before we even get into that, the pacing. The pacing for this is all over the place, guys. Straight up. The pacing, if they only have 5 episodes to work with, the pacing, I noticed that this is going to be like kind of all over the place when they first kind of showed Sakio and Tarukane right off the bat. They're using those as like side characters to explain exactly what's going on. And the fact that, you know, they're not really following the traditional story of like Yu Hakusho, how he had to go through all these ordeals apparently to get his body back, honestly. And he had the egg that actually saved Keiko at the end of the day. He didn't just do it himself. But these are changes, and I mean, you know what I mean? This isn't really, and for a first episode, and for getting the point across of like what we want Yu Yu Hakusho, what is Yu Yu Hakusho? I always think about it as like, someone who's ever seen Yu Yu Hakusho before, who's being introduced to Yu Yu Hakusho, would they enjoy this? Not a bad first episode. I don't really have any bad scenes. Let's move on to the Ash's favorite scenes. Yeah. Okay, Ash's favorite scenes. Coming in hot at number 3, the introduction of Hiei and Kurama. I actually liked this. I like the way that Kurama is fighting with the whip. Yeah, that's cool. Hiei too. They made Hiei and Kurama look fucking cool, bro. I gotta admit. The big giant green red monster, we know that from the anime and manga, he doesn't really stick around. He's not too prolific into the story. He's not into the story, but we know that he and Kurama are definitely OGs and significant to the story of Yu Yu Hakusho. So their entrance was pretty cool. But the big guy's entrance is, I will say, he looks good in terms of like CGI. So I really enjoyed that scene. It's just like how they kind of left that as like a conclusion for the whole episodes. And I thought the modernization of these items looked kind of decent too. So, but the only problem I guess I had was again with Kurama's hair. Coming in at number 2 for Ash's favorite saints. Number 2, the fight scene with the wires with Yusuke. Yes, dude, this entire fight sequence was amazing. The climax of the entire thing, yes, for sure, because that's when the action like really ramps up when he starts fighting him. But the whole idea of how he was using the wires to like string him about and make him like keep him off his balance, and how he's using the wires to his advantage at fighting him, that was Yusuke Urameshi. That was Togashi. That was him. That was just I felt that was anime. I felt the anime in that. That was anime. That was an anime sequence. And how was using just like the environment to fight him. It was just interesting and it was entertaining to watch. It was great. And the entire sequence was amazing. They shot that very well. They did that very, very, very well. And coming in at number 1 for Ash's favorite scenes. The rolled over by a truck scene with Yusuke. Holy shit. That set the tone for the entire episode. That's how you knew, and that's how I knew that this wasn't gonna be anything like the fucking anime or manga. It's not gonna be anything like that. Not really. That's how I knew that this was going to be a different experience. That was rough. That was like some rated R shit. It was just really, really brutal. Really, really brutal the way how he was just like ran over that way. We got to see everything. Every fucking thing. That truck, he went under the truck. Just wow. Really brutal scene. Anyway, Linda, can we get the on-review score, please, for Yu Yu Hakusho episode 1 live action? On-review is going to give this episode a strong 4 out of 5, honestly. It was really, really good. I had problems with the aesthetics of how they looked, but that's about it. It was entertaining. It was good to watch. Well, that's going to do it for me, folks. I'm definitely out of time. Thank you so much for listening. If you made it all the way to the end, guys, you are amazing. You are champs. You are on review stars. Yes. Thank you so much for listening. We really do appreciate it. And thank you for, all the support that we've gotten here for all the review casts on for interacting with all of our socials. So yes, be sociable on the socials, guys. Interact with us on the socials, your Facebook, your Instagram, your Twitter, and don't forget about that Patreon too, guys. We are taking donations to help the channel and the